Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody. Look at everybody in there. Oh my gosh. It's like a party in the chat.
So we're going to get this started. I haven't even heard what Jimmy Church is talking about right now, but that's fine.
Yeah, I heard the intro.
Got him here. He's going to Skype me in probably about 4 minutes, and then we'll probably do a commercial break after that. And
we're going to hang out during the commercial break. When Jimmy goes on break, we'll all be hanging out here.
Oh, well, you're not mic'd up right now, so here.
Yeah, but this mic's on, right? This mic's on?
No, they got
they
you
can't.
through here. So this is.
I will talk into Richard's mic.
But you're in a mood.
This is
Tracy's more worked up than I am.
This is the late night chat, so.
Yeah, I know. So this is how it always is. Tracy's like, so how are you feeling? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, everything's okay. No big deal. And she's like, what? You're not excited?
I feel like everybody in the chat is like, the mood is kind of like I should be massaging your shoulder.
No, nothing like that. I don't believe that. But it'll be an interesting time. Had a little bit of a chat with Jimmy earlier today, and look, Jimmy's very. I think he's actually very sympathetic to a lot of the people who have been criticizing Corey Goode over this hugely ill-advised attempt to shut down other people to speak about the secret space program. And I'm quite sure he'll be openly talking about that as well. So I think this will be a good discussion. I'm looking forward to doing it, and I hope everyone enjoys it. And here's Jimmy.
Know who? And you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
All right, man. We got about.
You're listening to Jimmy
Hello,
Church.
Mr. Jimmy?
Black.
How the hell are you?
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that clicks the net. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in,
The man's got a radio voice.
side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend, River Moon Coffee. Yes, River Moon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from River Moon Coffee. JimmyChurchRadio.com to be blend for 15% off of your order today. Go back.
Less good.
It's Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Times are changing. The circus of politics, healthcare's low standards and high prices. And let's not forget food quality. What to do? Arm yourself with Life Change Tea at GetTheTea.com. And poor air and water quality, it's time you make a move. Log on to GetTheTea.com.
We are live.
Up on organic, non-GMO supplements. Don't forget the tea. Cleansing your body never felt so good. And we have a brand new tea, Take Down Tea, which helps support healthy, natural body support so you can be at your best naturally. All you have to do is log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. We're not a fad that comes and goes. We are the real deal. Join us and armor up. GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Changing America's health one tea bag at a time.
This is great.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the planet.
Do you want to lose weight but have no idea where to begin? The Fast Start Diet, a 3-day weight loss plan, is the answer. 3 days of nutritionally balanced, calorie-restricted meals delivered right to your door. Shop, cooking, Everything is prepared for you and ready to eat at home or on the go. The Fast Start diet has all the amazing benefits of intermittent fasting without starving. We've helped thousands of people who have struggled to reach their weight loss goals. Isn't it time we helped you? With the Fast Start diet, you'll lose weight and feel great.
Find Fast Start Diet on Amazon or go to faststartdiet.com and use promo code TALK to get 10% off your first box. And as a special bonus, Fast Start will include their #1 rated Lipo-3 appetite suppressant spray free with your order. This is Jimmy Church. And whatever your diet plans are, do what I did. Go to faststartdiet.com.
From Amble, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio. Here we go.
Yes, sir.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You can follow Richard Dolan at Rich Dolan. I don't know why it's not Richard. I just think he was speed typing. He just got the Rich. Maybe his family calls him Rich. Maybe that's some inside info. But you can follow him at Rich Dolan. Tomorrow night, Laura Eisenhower's here. Wednesday night, Nick Redfern. Thursday night is Fader Night Open Lines. Tonight, it's Richard Dolan, one of the world's leading researchers and writers on the subject of UFOs, and believes that they constitute the greatest mystery of our time. Richard completed his graduate work at the University of Rochester, where he studied U.S. Cold War strategy, European history, and international diplomacy. Before that, he studied at Alfred University and Oxford University and had been for a Rhodes Scholarship. He's the author of UFOs in the National Security State. He co-authored with Bicycle AD After Disclosure. And of course, his latest book that I've been talking about for the last 4 years is UFOs and the 21st Century Mind. Of course, he hosts a weekly radio show, The Richard Dolan Show, right here on KGRA. He's a frequent guest with me over at Coast to Coast AM and is currently featured on several television series and documentaries, including Ancient Aliens, Hangar One, The UFO Files, and Close Encounters, and of course his Gaia TV series False Flags. In addition to all of this research, he also has Richard Dolan Press, which he actively publishes innovative books by authors from all around the world. But tonight, we're going to discuss the latest news in our UFO community. We're going to talk about trademarks, publishing, and the media. Maybe get a little TTSA in, maybe some Gaia TV, maybe some recent UFO sightings, and of course, his next book on false flags. Right now, it's Richard Bleepin' Dolan on Fade to Black. Anything can happen and probably will. Welcome back, Richard. How are you, man?
Hello, Mr. Jimmy. I'm glad to be here with you.
And Richard, I'm not going to talk to you about false flags tonight, but let me ask you this. What was the last song you listened to today?
Caught totally off guard.
Yeah, you weren't expecting that, were you?
Let's see. I don't think we discoed it up today. Tracy's sitting right here with me. So.
Hey, Jimmy.
Hey, Trace.
So I think they had classical music, some kind of Bach thing. I'm going to guess English suites. Very exciting stuff. Everyone wants to hear about Bach's English suites. Go listen and learn. We'll do Donna Summer next time.
Okay, somebody tweeted out, that Richard definitely listened to disco today, but he's gonna go the classical route and save himself. That was actually a tweet.
Really? That was a very good prediction.
Yeah, so there you go. You saved yourself.
Very astute prediction.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Hey, Richard, Richard Bleepin' Dolan, are you going to trademark that?
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to go through some trademark and some significant copyright measures myself to protect my own IP. Okay. I figure it's the only way to go.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I'm not going to trademark anything. I think.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do that. Honestly, the whole trademarking thing is bringing everyone right up to the edge of almost being like a patent troll. And we're on here. You and I chatted about this earlier today, talking about the what I just think of as the Corey Goode trademark fiasco.
Right.
And I don't even pretend that I have the whole story on this. Tracy and I, we've been really trying to get to the bottom of it. I have been trying to figure this out to the best of my ability, and I know that there's information I probably lack, but it does look to me that we're dealing with, on some level, on one level, a kind of almost standard battle that you find in media and among corporations to protect. After a nasty breakup, which obviously happened with Corey and David Wilcock with Gaia, over the rights to presumably their shows. I'm guessing they probably are looking at greener pastures somewhere, and they want to be able to, or he wants to be able to maintain certain titles. So I get that, and probably a lot of people get that. But the problem, of course, is first of all, you can't try to stop other people from talking about this subject. That's ridiculous. Secondly, to have the pretense that you have ownership over certain phrases like SSP, and really implied the phrase secret space program in his attorney's letter to Jason Rice not long ago, that certainly is implied. So there's, here's the thing. I think a lot of us who've really followed the UFO field and have been involved in it for a long time have tried to just avoid and ignore a lot of what's been going on in these so-called whistleblowers and the 20 and back programs and the like, and just hoping that they would one day just go away. I was one such person. I just thought, this can't be real. This can't be happening. And yet every year it was a phenomenon that seemed to grow and leave so much more litter and trash in the on the streets of our UFO-oriented community.
Right.
And I think what pushed a lot of folks over, myself and a lot of my own colleagues, I've chatted with Joseph Farrell and Catherine Austin Fitz and a number of other people who are very involved in this. A lot of them are very well known. Lots of people out on YouTube talking about this. And I just think a lot of us are not really going to want to put up with this anymore. This is too far. You can't trademark certain phrases that have been in use for years and indeed decades, like secret space program.
Well, let me jump in.
That's a problem.
Yeah. Let me jump in really quick. You're a publisher, right?
Yeah.
Do you trademark your stuff?
Nope.
And why?
Never.
And why is that?
Why? Why should I need to? Like, seriously, why should I need to trademark anything that because I'm not creating fiction, right? It's like I'm not creating like a creative work of art. I'm working in the field of history, which is the field of truth.
Right.
And how is it that anyone could have a pretense to trademark truth? Like, if I were writing a book on the people in the state of New York where I happen to live, could I trademark New York State?
Like, or the people of New York?
It would be absurd. It would be ridiculous. And hopefully people would laugh at me if I tried to do that. The fact that Corey Goode has been trying to trademark Sphere Being Alliance or Blue Avians, that's what J.K. Rowling would trademark Harry Potter because that's a work of fiction.
Right.
Like, you would trademark works of fiction. But I mean, if you're going on the pretense that what you're talking about is real and like real people, like if there are such blue avian blue birds that are out there, then why would you show them the ultimate disrespect of trying to trademark them? Like, that wouldn't make sense if they were real. But if they were a work of fiction, well, it's entirely different. So there's just a lot of this going on, and to try to trademark things that are true and particularly meaningful to a wider community, that's pernicious and that's wrong. And I think good people are right to try to step in and say something about it.
Yeah, and I've stated very publicly here that I haven't trademarked anything. I don't know if I should. I don't know. But I really don't care about it. Right? In that it's this is a community that should just be unrestricted. The problem that I have, first off, anybody has the right to go and trademark whatever they want. You, Richard, me, or anybody, if they feel the need to protect themselves. But if you do that, then you shouldn't be critical about anybody else that is making a trademark claim, because then it's a little bit hypocritical.
Well, actually, yeah. And when I first heard about this a couple of weeks ago, my initial inclination was to look at it exactly that way, that he's in a war with Gaia. It's all about money. It's all about money. And then those are sordid stories frequently, but nonetheless, that's their business. And if you want to trademark something to protect yourself, okay, I can get that. But when you jump over the line and attempt, and there was always, even then, like this subtext that people were wondering about as to, well, yeah, if you trademark something, does that mean you have exclusive rights over certain types of use of it, whether it's monetization or certain types of other uses? And that lurked in the background. And I understand that he has said, no, I'm not trying to do that. But then he goes and does it. Like he goes and does it to Jason Rice and explicitly using his lawyer, using phrases like SSP and secret space program. And honestly, I have to say this, like if you need a lawyer, I would not use his lawyer, because that is such a ham-fisted, obvious attempt, like a sledgehammer style of intimidation that would be used at Jason Rice. I just think, are you kidding me? Like, it's like that can't be a credible legal threat. And indeed, if you read that letter carefully, there isn't really any kind of legal standing that they have. It's just all, like you are strongly, what is it? You're strongly requested. We firmly requested to cease and desist. It's like, well, what are you going to do? Use harsh language at me? They didn't really have anything, but the fact that they're trying to is a nasty little thing to do. And it really showed. Well, it shows. Many people are going to say it shows his true colors. I guess I would leave it at that.
This is not. I'm not directly involved, but I somewhat am in that letter and how it was perceived. And for me, look, okay. If you want to trademark something, trademark it. You got T-shirts you want to make. You've got a comic book. You got a movie you're going to do. You got whatever, and you feel the need. That's fine. And not controlling people's conversations, and if people are free, and you want to say that, fine. But then this letter gets sent out and goes public. That letter reads to me that you are telling somebody that if they come on this show, they can't talk about things that you don't want them to talk about, and that is censorship. And I that letter rubbed me the wrong way.
It should. I mean, that letter is one more symptom of a much more generalized sickness in our society, and it goes well beyond the UFO field. This is very widespread, and it is intact in many ways on the range of what people can say in public. And I think what's happened over 20 years, we've been beaten down more and more by don't say this, don't do that, don't think that, or you're a bad person, can't say this. And we've gotten into this point in our society where we just kind of like, we shrug our shoulders. Oh, I guess I can't say that. And so I think if this tactic had been tried 20 plus years ago, we would have laughed it out of existence, like it could never have been conceived. But the fact that it can be conceived today and attempted is just a sign of a broader sickness that we have in our society. But no, this is a really bad thing. And aside from that, I don't really even, it's almost bothersome to talk about this, because in my view, the UFO subject is serious. And when and the secret space program itself is something that's very serious and meaningful. And I just have to say this, and in fact, I've mentioned this with you previously on prior shows that we have done together over the years. And I don't know for an absolute fact that this is the case with Corey Goode or other people who've claimed to be whistleblowers in the secret space program. But I will say that over the long history of the UFO phenomenon, there has been a great deal of infiltration of this subject, of this field, by the U.S. intelligence community. It's happened. There's been, I was looking into this just recently for some of the broadcasts that I've been doing, and back in the 1950s, you had contactees like George Van Tassel and George Adamski and Howard Menger and Truman Bethoram and George Hunt Williamson, all of whom appear to have had different types of connections to the U.S. intelligence community, whether FBI or maybe even in the case of Adamski, suspected CIA. And this isn't proven, but there are indications. And I bring this up because many researchers have concluded that at least some of those contactees, I met with people from Venus and I have this message for humanity and so on, were brought in order to discredit the genuine phenomenon itself. We do know that the U.S. intelligence community back in the 50s and 60s and all throughout was actively involved in infiltrating the UFO field. We know this through the Robertson panel. We know this beyond UFOs through things like Operation Mockingbird, where the CIA completely managed so much of U.S. media for decades, and they still do, frankly. So there's infiltration, and there were infiltration of UFO groups like APRO and NICAP and MUFON. There was the well-known disinformation campaign by Richard Doty against Paul Benowitz around 1980. So this has happened. And what I'm saying is, if there is a genuine secret space program, which I firmly believe there is, and I have a lot of reasons why I'd be happy to explain this again. And if we were in charge of maintaining security on that very important program, it would be the greatest thing, wouldn't it, to have people going out into the public talking smack about things that are just so absolutely absurd that the entire subject loses all credibility and serious research stays away from it. So it is a tactic. And we know, in fact, that this is something that continues to this day. Edward Snowden made this very, very clear with his releases when he talked about GCHQ, that's Britain's NSA, basically, about how they have programs to control, infiltrate, manipulate online discourse and to compromise the integrity of online conversations and create things like fake victim posts where, there's alleged victims of a target that they want to destroy their reputation, like what appears to have happened to Julian Assange. So you have active types of disinformation going on today. You have a statement by Cass Sunstein. He was a leading lawyer and a judge, very prominent in the Obama administration back in 2008. He co-authored a paper talking about conspiracy theories. He talked about how do we deal with the government response to these, what we would now call fake news. And he just said, look, what we got to do is create cognitive infiltration of extremist groups. So I'll leave that to you to decide what that means, cognitive infiltration of groups that they consider to be a danger. That's as recently as 2008. So everything's in place for us to see the evidence that there is very strong reason that intelligence agencies would seek to undermine groups and organizations that they deem to be dangerous. And I don't know Corey Goode's deal here, okay? I've met him a couple times personally, and I'll just say, we were very civil with each other. I sat next to him at the MUFON panel in 2017, which lots of people have, you can see that on YouTube. And I have nothing against this man personally. And I think he would believe me, and it's true. But what I do feel a strong obligation for is to defend the integrity of my field. That is the field of UFOs that is legitimate and that really can't be dragged through one after another of not only unproven claims, but unprovable claims. These are literally impossible to verify. And they're the kinds of stories, and I'm going to let you I'll take a breath here for you. These are the kinds of stories, like if these were from your next door neighbor, who said, yeah, I went to Mars. You'd be like, oh, really? You went to Mars? Yes, I went to Mars. You might be a little suspicious, and you might ask them, right? You'd say, well, how long were you there? Oh, 20 years. And, when? There's another kind of incredible thing. And then you'd say, well, people must have missed you. Or do you have any documentation? No documentation. Well, did people miss you? No one missed me because at the end of my 20 years, I came right back to my house and no one knew I left the house at all. And you would think my next door neighbor's crazy. You would think that. Anyone would think that. But there's a very, very odd phenomenon, I believe, that happens in our society when you get such a person, you put them in front of 500 or 1,000 people in hushed tones where they're practically revered, and a different mindset happens. And it's a kind of hypnotism. And it's a very dangerous thing where in our society, no one, or not, at least many people, are not asking for evidence. Some people, thankfully, are asking and demanding evidence, but lots of people aren't. So, this is now the time. I think it just was a very miscalculated move, a ham-fisted move to try to prevent someone else from talking about this by claiming ownership over these phrases that have, I think, brought a lot of people together, and they've just said, enough, no more. And I'm one of them. No more.
Yeah. And let me ask you this, Richard. And this isn't in defense of or even a negative approach to any of this, because of my past guest on this show, and that most are friends of yours too as well. So I'm not making anything definitive by saying this, but let's say that we have you and I are sitting at a conference, and somebody comes up and sits down that you and I know, and they're telling us about their abduction experience, where a craft landed in their backyard. They went out, they took off in the craft, and they were probed, and eyes were cut into, whatever, implants. They had their experience. They come back and they sit down and they share this with us, and you and I are sitting there. Do you call BS at that moment to that person's face?
No, never. No.
Okay.
Absolutely
let me ask
not.
And so, but hold on. This is where, because I've had my own experiences too. And when I have my experiences, that as crazy as they are, and somebody talks about going on a craft, or and experiencing communication and a close encounter of the third or fourth kind, how is that any difference in how we listen to them if they don't have the evidence that everybody wants to scream for? How is it different with Corey or Andy Bishago or Randy Kramer or anybody else that we're going to listen to?
Oh, I think it's a very good point that you raised, and I'm glad that you did. I mean, there's a great deal of nuance and gray area when you talk about people who've come forward with their experiences. And I just personally want folks to know, if they hear me and sometimes they think, wow, he's coming down very hard against experiencers. Not true. Not true at all. I have spoken to and interviewed hundreds of individuals who've had very, very troubling and interesting and amazing experiences with what appear to be other beings that are not human. A lot of these people, I would say most, I find credible, but there's differences. All right. So with most of these people, I mean, I cannot prove their experiences. That is true. But that's not the same as saying that everyone's unprovable experiences are therefore equal, because I don't agree with that. There are other ways of judging it. So, for example, someone can come up to me at a conference, for example, and I don't know them from Adam, and they live a life pretty much in anonymity, and they come up to me and they say, look, I don't really want attention. I respect what you do, and this is something that happened to me X number of years ago. And they're not asking for anything. All right, so that carries a certain amount of weight to me.
Sure it does.
And there's just the fact of how does human judgment work? This isn't a science. There's not a math equation that's in place for me or for anyone, I would think, where they say, they have the gavel and they say real, not real, and so forth. It doesn't work like that. It's true. However, in the case of these whistleblowers, all right, so if you're going to make a claim that you went to Mars, let's say, all right, it may be the case that you can't prove that you went to Mars, right? I can understand that. So can you give us something else? Can you throw us a bone? Don't give me New Age ideology and platitudes, please. Don't give me any of that. Could you please, however, give me something that I can genuinely work with that is in any remote way verifiable and that doesn't reek of self-glorification and this type of thing that's happened. And also, I think I wasn't necessarily going to bring this up, but the Corey Goode and the Project Avalon server data situation is something that I think is a significant element here. And what is a fact is that, Corey Goode was an active member of Project Avalon, and I know Bill Ryan. You know Bill Ryan, who runs Avalon and has run it for years. Avalon is an amazing forum where very, very engaged individuals in this subject talk about well, pretty much every element of the subject under the sun, including Mars, including Antarctica, and all the other things that are out on the fringe, even for ufology. And what they were able to do is, because if you go to their site, they've got your IP that's legal. They're able to do that. And they were able to do a data search on their forum server using the IP addresses that Corey Goode used most frequently from 2010 right up to 2014, and actually even beyond that. Now, it wasn't until September of 2014 that Corey Goode was interviewed by a woman named Christine Anderson and claimed to have sudden recent recall of his memories. But it is the fact that for 4 solid years before that, his file contained 6,539 entries or threads, basically, where he, from my point of view, looked like he was data mining the Project Avalon server data, looking up stuff that was written by like Michael Salla, Laura Eisenhower, myself, and many other people on these things. And for 4 years, you're going into this intensely, and then suddenly, boom, you remember that you too had such experiences. Now, that doesn't even by itself prove that he went in and just stole everyone else's information, but it is very suspicious. It's very suspicious. So when you have that kind of a background, and then you go in and claim ownership over those very phrases that had been in existence for years before, I mean, how can you not be surprised when people kick back and just say, are you kidding? Like, what is wrong with you that you think you can do that? So there's a lot of problems here. And so for those reasons, I'm going to call BS on what he has to say. And that's it. I'm not the only one. I think there's lots of people. There is a genuine secret space program, but there's no evidence that it's the 20 and back program. And just because other people come out and say that they did the same thing, sorry, but you know what? No sale. That's not evidence. When people say, oh, well, so-and-so also says the same thing, like, how is that evidence? When people are just copying and pasting variations of the story. If someone wanted to go into this field and lay waste with disinformation, how long would it take them to study up on all of the themes that are in this field and come up with their own unprovable, self-glorifying story about,
well, I can ask.
I mean, it wouldn't be that difficult. It's not that difficult.
Couple of years on Project Avalon, and you go to school and you get a degree. So there you go. Let's take a break right here, Richard, and we'll pick up right where we left off when we come back. And I've got something else Richard should trademark. What that is, I'll tell you when we come back. Richard, stay right there.
Yes, sir.
Richard Dolan, Fade to Black. Me, it doesn't get any better. I'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
All right. You get the lab. You want to chat? So,
okay, so we're going to turn that down. Just want to say hi, everyone. You guys are amazing. The chat is crazy. There's so many cool people here. I just want to say hi. I just want to say thanks because I know you don't know, but people are really supporting you. And,
wonderful. I didn't want to look at any of the chat. It's very distracting. I'm sure you understand. But thank you, everyone. So I really did come down with a hammer there.
Yeah.
Came down kind of tough.
Yeah, you did.
But look, I mean, it's how I feel. And,
I know.
I'm just trying to be as honest about it as I can. And it is important. Like, this isn't a personal war.
I know.
And I don't want to make it a personal war. There's other people out there, they make it personal. That's their choice. I don't want to go there. I don't want it to be about that. And I'm trying not to make it like that. And I don't know if that's really successfully coming across, but that's
no, I think you're trying to make the point, like, going after a person personally is sort of like a character assassination, but going after what they've done and the wrong choices, pointing out and condemning some of the choices that they've made and the things that it's done to the community is fair, It's
gone for way, way too long, in my opinion. And So I've just felt for years that this blowback was an inevitability. I mean, I've talked with you about this many times. I just thought how it will happen, when it will happen, I don't know. And I don't even know, honestly, if this will be, or if this movement, because it's not just me, it's lots of people. I know Daniel's out there. Want to say hi, and Joe from the Carolinas, and
Jason Quitt's there.
Jason.
Alan from New Realities is here.
Oh.
Kevin Moore from The Moore Show is here. A lot of our regulars are here. We've got our members here. We have so many people. It's really great. And there's also some people from both sides in the chat.
Yeah, look, if you're a fan or a friend of Corey Goode,
Dark Journalist is here now.
Hey, Dark Journalist.
Hey.
I'm not your enemy. Like, I will speak to anyone in this field. Earlier today, I did an interview with a evangelical biblical Christian. I've done interviews with like ultra new age, Galactic Federation light workers and hardcore materialist skeptics and everyone else. Like, for me, we're all, no matter how much we may disagree with each other, we are still, I think most of us are genuinely doing our best to try to understand what this great reality is. And so we can disagree. What makes me sad, actually, and upset in our society today is how there's a tendency to polarize other sides of the argument and to almost to dehumanize people. And I don't want to do whether Democrat versus Republican and that type of thing, but even in the UFO field. And I don't ever want someone to feel that I'm trying to do that to them, because I think that's a bad road to go down.
Yeah.
I mean, societies can dissolve. You can go from a state of general real consensus where people are, you may disagree, but you can still recognize someone else. You can go from that state to a state where they're literally tearing each other apart and killing each other. And that happens to societies. And it starts when you dehumanize people you disagree with.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people who feel pretty angry in the chat. They're very frustrated by all of this. And
well, I don't blame someone. It's no one's fault for being wrong. As I like to say, I've been wrong about a lot of things in my life. But if you persist,
I love the second part of that.
If you persist in your falsehood in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary, then you got a problem. So at a certain point, like, it's any responsible person's obligation, I would say, you have to look at the other side. You have to look at the other side of the argument. I've tried to look at the argument of these whistleblowers, not just Corey, but Andy, and I remember Bernard Mendez, who I met personally on one occasion, a couple of times. Oh, here we go.
We're coming back. We're coming back.
There we go. All right, let me get this.
Oh, yeah. Got it.
Welcome back. Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Cough button. Our guest tonight, Richard Dolan, and I had to have my coffee refilled. Okay, so now we're back in the saddle, and we're going to pick up right where we left off. And Richard,
yes,
breakaway civilization. Shouldn't you trademark that?
No, I don't think so. Absolutely, I don't think so. It was an interesting concept that I coined and developed. But here's the thing. You know what? Other people have taken that idea and made some very, very interesting conceptual breakthroughs on their own, totally independent of me. My friend and colleague, Joseph P. Farrell, has done that. He's written an entire book with breakaway civilization in the title. My attitude is excellent. Good for Joseph.
Okay,
because I don't own the idea. I mean, I developed the idea, but I don't own it. Like, it's not my property.
Okay, well then.
And if other people come along and do better work or more sophisticated work with it, then thank goodness. Like, that's what we want.
Okay, well, at the next Contact in the Desert, I'm going to let you know our booths are next to each other. And at our booth, I am going to be selling Breakaway Civilization t-shirts.
I hope you make a lot of money on it. Go for it. And I'll be staring you down the whole time. But go for it. I'm not going to stop you.
And let's kind of stay on this subject for a second. I want to talk about whistleblowers. And when a whistleblower comes forward, before I get to the question, they need to feel comfortable that they can speak open and go forward with whatever it is that they're going to blow the whistle on, right? And I will certainly say that cease and desist letter from Corey's attorney certainly is going to stifle anybody else that would be thinking about coming forward, because they're going to get some kind of crazy cease and desist letter that doesn't have any merit to it, but
they're
afraid of that kind of stuff.
Right. It's a form of intimidation.
It's a form of intimidation.
There's no legal merit to it, as you just said. It's vacuous from a legal point of view. We've had a number of behind the scenes discussions about this, and there's just no way. But it is a form of intimidation, and I'm glad. I don't know Jason Rice, and nor do I really have an opinion at this point on the validity of his story. I don't, but I am glad that he wasn't intimidated by it, and that he spoke about it the way that he did publicly. And for that matter, I would just say I think what he wrote was very reasoned and very well put together.
The definition of a whistleblower, coming from your perspective, what is that definition?
Yeah, a whistleblower, first of all, it's got to be someone you have to know who they are. Like, you've got to be able to have some ability to confirm that they are who they say they are. If they can't do that, then they don't qualify. So as I like to say, William Binney, formerly of the NSA, is a whistleblower and, in my view, a hero. Double amputee, who's a man who created a lot of the code that the NSA used to spy illegally on the American public, and then went public about it, and much to his own risk. There's a lot of other whistleblowers like that. I would say I would put Gary McKinnon in the UFO field in such a category. We know who Gary is. He wasn't a government insider, but he was someone who gained access to government information and put what information that he could out there. We can confirm his identity. I cannot confirm the first thing about Corey Goode's activities in a so-called secret space program. It's just not there. So no, he doesn't count. And none of these people who are talking about Mars.
Okay, what about Jason Rice? Is by your definition, is he in that category? Is he a whistleblower?
Not yet. Not for me. No. I don't know his. No, absolutely not. No, okay. Stephen Greer's bodyguard. No. No. I mean, 2000 autopsy procedures. No.
Richard's going to be here all week. Everybody, try the veal. He's the thing is, when is whistleblower for you a little bit too easily used, right? And it does the classification, right?
Just a bit around the edges, yeah.
Just a bit around the edges, right? Is it a term? Is it a title that should be given to you, right? You don't give yourself the title of whistleblower.
Yeah, I would think that in a good universe that would be the case as well. Now that you mentioned that, look, I mean, the phrase whistleblower has been bandied about with so that it's almost meaningless. It's like anyone who's got a good campfire story to tell is now the latest whistleblower. I mean, we need a little bit more than this, right? I mean, do we have no self-respect for ourselves in this discipline, that we just take anyone who's got the latest, greatest, crazy story that can never be proven, that is just out of a Hollywood movie? Most of these, I mean, is reality truly that black and white? Like the good, versus the absolute evil entities over here, and the white hats and the black hats. Like, does anyone honestly think reality is that utterly simplistic? I mean, that's what you get in a bad Hollywood B movie. Reality, is not that way. The world doesn't break down like that. So, I mean, is it possible that there could be some truth in some of the claims of these people? Yes, the answer is yes. In the case of Corey Goode, when you go data mining through the Avalon site, yes, you're going to find information that's genuine. Of course you will. And could there be truth in, is it marginally possible that some of these whistleblowers have been mind jogged, mind screwed in such a way that they've been made useless for the rest of the world, made to look ridiculous, so that anything that they say is just going to be dismissed out of hand. I mean, I've wondered this, but of course I don't have access to my own time machine, so I can't go back and find out what they were actually doing back in the day. And B, I'm not a mind reader.
Right.
So I don't have these capabilities. So all I can do is use the best tools at my disposal, which are evidence that I can acquire and as much common sense and insight as I'm able to bring to bear, which admittedly is limited because I'm just a human being. And all we can do is our best. But when we just throw out all ability and all willingness to hold claims to certain types of evidentiary standards, then like, why are we bothering then at all? Why bother? When I broke into the UFO field over 20 years ago, I did so because I believed that there was a case, an evidentiary case that could be made for the reality of this ridiculed and marginalized phenomenon. And I very strongly believe that to this day. So it's all evidence-based. Like, what would it be for me to write a bunch of histories where there's not a single piece of evidence that I can document, and I just tell people, trust me, this is true? Like, that doesn't help. So the only way that we can help move this field forward in a real way, not in a fantasy way, is by being evidence-based. And that's difficult. Like, in the old TV show, what was it, Law and Order, where they would have a case that they knew that this guy did the crime. And then the defense attorney would say, well, that's not admissible, Jack, and they would do their best to try to get admissible evidence. That's our world. Like, you can't just toss out anything because you think it sounds right. We have rules of evidence. We ought to have standards that we apply so that we have a common language of how to move forward in this field. Anyone can make a claim, and but not everyone can back that claim up with evidence. And if you can't, then no. In the case of genuine whistleblowers, they're able to provide tangible, actual evidence and departments that other journalists and investigators can then dig into and find. They can find it. If you can't find it, then you got to wonder what's going on here.
Yeah, and this is okay. And this is a very fascinating aspect of this, which is you and I, we're at a conference, pick one, it doesn't matter. And I introduce, Corey. There's 500, 600, 700 people there for Corey. The line goes down the hall, right? And then across the hall, there is somebody else that is speaking about their UFO research across the hall to 20 people, right? And here you are watching me introduce, you're there, right? You're there. And you watch me do this introduction. You have this packed room that is there resonating with Corey, but yet across the hall, there are 20 people that are listening to somebody else's research that is just equally as important. But why do we have this difference? It is as polarized. I don't understand it.
I do. It's market and demand. So there are certain markets that are very, very hungry for certain types of information, and there's always going to be someone willing to fill that market need. There's a great hunger among many people who are interested in the UFO subject for solid answers and for fascinating insider claims, and because we all know that there's secrecy, we all know there's a cover-up, and so there's lots of people out there of certainty. They want that, and then when somebody comes along and offering that certainty, or seemingly offering that certainty, yes, absolutely, many people will gravitate to it. And here's the thing: I don't even begrudge someone if they speak to a packed house, 1,000 people or more. That is fine. Like, I'm a great believer in free enterprise, capitalistic. Like, make your money the way you want to make your money. Like, I absolutely am a believer in that, and I think it's made this Western civilization such a powerhouse and a fount of creativity and innovation. So I think it's wonderful. And even if someone wants to make their money in less than ethical ways, well, if they're not actually actively harming someone else, well, let the buyer beware. But, but what I would say is that in an area where I am trying and other people are trying to help this marginalized important subject gain credibility so that we can have an intelligent public conversation about it, which we desperately need. All right. Then yes, I too am allowed to state my issues and my problems with that type of presentation. And that's really all that it is. If these types of arguments were simply on the margin and no one was listening, well, I wouldn't care either. It's like, no, there's always cranks out there. But this has become actually a very, very significant part of the UFO field. And I just want to say this to you, like you've often talked about, the need for unity in the UFO community. And I understand that, but can you or anyone think of anything more disruptive to the UFO community than the intrusion of Corey Goode and his claims over the past 4 years? Like I cannot think of a single thing that has actually been more divisive, more disruptive, more distracting than that. So there's a problem here. There's a problem in that it has successfully caused such a chasm. And there are other wastes of time that we've had in this field. The whole ramp up to the ascension of 2012 was just one big, huge embarrassment for this field. I mean, there were people, I actually met someone at that time in the ramp up to 2012 who stopped paying her either her rent or her mortgage or something like that because she said, oh, well, when it all happens, it won't matter. I'm like, you're crazy. You're deluded. I don't know what happened to her. She's probably out on the streets. And then, the whole Comet Elenine of 2011, what a waste of time that was. That was supposed to be a spaceship. No. And on and on. So our field has always been filled with these types of distractions, and that's unfortunate, and maybe that's just how it's always going to be. But that doesn't mean that we have to just sit down and say, oh, well, here's another one. So we can speak up. We can just say, not this time. This has gone on too long enough.
Okay, so let's discuss. Let's cite a very specific example of this where I think that the community has just moved on. Billy Meyer. We have a situation here where a gazillion books have been sold, a gazillion videos. I would say that largely, and I'm just speaking about the community, a large amount of it has been completely debunked. Yet he lives in a pretty nice house in Switzerland, right? He's probably got pretty good money flow, multiple areas that are coming in. But the community has moved on. And right. the subject, it's just like a big whatever thing when it comes to Billy Meyer. Is that the same thing that would happen over and over again? Look at, we can bring up William Moore or other things that have very dark things in our past. About the Roswell slides and that fiasco in Mexico City. Is this community able to just rebound and move on, and next year all of this is past tense?
Yes, no, we can always move on. The fortunate thing is that the UFO subject remains the great constant in this, and it's the thing that we can all come back to. Mm-hmm. The things that you mentioned, one of which I was associated with, the whole Roswell slide debacle. They're all different. Like the Billy Meyer thing's a little different, and some of these others, the William Moore thing, are a little different. But they're all they were various crises, some big, some little, that the UFO research community faced. And actually, it's really true that in every one of those cases, there were the apocalypse people who said, this is the end of ufology. And, they're saying it now, too, I think, some of them with Corey Goode. And, of course, it's not the end of ufology. As long as there's a phenomenon for us to study and to keep coming back to, then we'll be fine. The thing is, it's like in a boxing match where you get knocked down onto the canvas a few times, you got to keep getting back up. and come back at it again. That's what this is all about. So I don't think this is a disaster. I don't think it's something that we as a community can't recover from. No, absolutely not. In fact, most people, all serious researchers, are continuing and they're doing their work just like they've always done. So that's never changed. There's lots of people out there doing very, very excellent investigative work, research, and so on, and continuing to make progress in this field. So that's the good thing. And that's where I think, we're all best served. But the emotionally unsatisfying aspect of that, at least for some people, is that those answers are not always quite as definitive as the answers that are provided by people who claim that they've had these incredible, Hollywood adventures on other planets.
The question of proof, which you brought up earlier, is something that we are always looking for. What is it? Where's the proof?
Or even evidence. I mean, proof is hard. I don't demand proof from people coming to me with claims. I mean, sometimes that's not realistic, but at least evidence, like something. Okay, you got to work with it.
Yeah, let's break it down a little bit. I want to pick your brain. When you're dealing with an experiencer, what are you looking for there as far as evidence and proof? Well, it's just an experience.
To be honest with you, if an experiencer comes up to me, I just met with someone. I just met with an experiencer locally yesterday. Met this man for the first time, and I was introduced to him. We had a nice conversation, and as I do with lots of folks, I listen as carefully as I'm able to, which is I listen to this man very carefully. You size people up. You get character references, which I have one for this gentleman in particular. You learn everything you can about their life. And you do your best to assess it, and that's it. With most of these people who will come to me with experiences, I don't know that I can say for sure that someone's telling me the truth or someone's lying to me. It's a matter of degree. I can't prove that this man that I met yesterday, for instance, is absolutely honest. Maybe he's a brilliant psychopathic liar. I don't think so, but I suppose any of these things are possible. So when I make a conclusion about someone's claims, they're usually provisional and always subject to revision based on new information that comes my way. And that's the best I can do.
We're going to head towards a break here, but there's another part of the experiencer abductee phenomenon that has completely intrigued me. And it's weird how it kind of overlaps into other aspects of the secret space program and SAPs and whatnot, which is these abductees that talk about going to an underground facility. There are many out there that share these same thing, where they show up, they're underground, and they see U.S. military personnel in uniform. They'll see a mantis being, they'll see a tall Nordic, they'll see some grays at, operating some gear, and maybe instructions in classrooms, and very elaborate, stories. Now, what do we do with that when it is repeated over and over again?
Yes. I mean, I'm of the opinion that when you get that type of story from so many parts of the data spectrum, that they'll come in and have this story, whether it's in 1969 or 1975 or 1972 or 1988 or 1989 or
2017.
Right. When they continually come, and if we can be careful with at least doing our level best with trying to legitimately get that information out of an individual, then yes, I think, and there is a very consistent story that a lot of these folks are saying, whether it's about military abductions or abductions by non-humans, whether aliens or alien-human hybrids and the like. So there's a lot of consistency. So for these types of stories, yes, I give a very high level of credibility to them, credence. Doesn't mean that I know for an absolute fact. I don't say a 100%, but I definitely give them my probability. But when a alleged whistleblower comes at us and provides a Hollywood script, essentially, so really what these are, you know, garnished with New Age philosophy and ideology that is clearly designed for a particular kind of market, then no, I mean, I will be very suspicious of that. Yes.
And why is it, and we need to take a break here, but the New Age aspect of this, and especially as of late, has been interwoven into what should be not only a terrifying experience, but also the killing of, or the enslavement of, and so forth. And then you have this New Age dialogue that is interwoven into it.
Yeah.
Why is that? Is it to grow the audience? I mean,
well, we should continue this to the next segment because it's a very important subject. The New Age influence in ufology has had a very damaging effect. It's not that there's no legitimacy to understanding things like telepathy and consciousness in the UFO field, or even things like space-time, reality, and quantum physics. No, we can explore all of that because they're important. But the philosophy, the ideology, which we collectively call New Age ideology, this has had a very damaging effect to UFO research and the UFO community. And it's really part of the reason why we have these whistleblowers, because in other words, with the New Age ideology, again, there's no emphasis on evidence. It's all, a lot of it comes down to what you feel in your heart chakra, you know, or, and I don't mean to laugh at someone's belief, but when you're basing your belief on feeling and intuition rather than evidence, then you're going down a very dangerous road where anything is possible and you don't need to back it up. And then you get these whistleblowers who follow through with that. You know, there's no evidence, but it feels right. And that is the worst way to go into this subject, is based on your feelings. You got to go on evidence. You got to be an investigator.
Let's pick this up. We're leaving off. Our guest tonight, Richard Bleeping Dolan, allegedly trademarked. I'll be right back after this short break. This is Fade to Black. I'm your Timothy. Stay with us.
I think I just lost a New Age vote.
My man, 4 minutes.
You got it.
Okay.
Oh, let's lower this here.
Yeah. So what did you guys think of that?
Oh, sorry about that. Whoopsie. Everything okay there?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh my gosh, you guys have been so generous. You don't have to do that, but thank you.
No,
thank
you, but like, we're not doing this for financial support. Honestly, we just did the live stream because we thought it'd be a cool idea. So, but I'm very, very glad that you're all here, and I see there's a lot of people out there. For us, that's kind of a big.
Giza Death Star is here as well.
Hey, Joseph.
Everybody's in there. We have so many people in the house. Oh my gosh.
Very glad that so many people that I personally know are out there, and I'm definitely happy about that.
Yeah, definitely.
And Joe, we're going to talk soon. I can't remember if we said Tuesday or Wednesday, but anyway, we're doing.
Yeah, Joe's saying hi right now. Yeah. It's either tomorrow or the next day. We're really looking forward to that. Richard and Joe are going to talk about this subject and go a little further with it. So tomorrow, he says it's tomorrow. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Joe.
I forget occasionally. It's in the calendar somewhere.
There's so many right now. I mean, this is such a big topic. Obviously, this is a huge conversation that needs to happen. There are a lot of people. It's affecting a lot of people. And I mean, obviously, we have a huge crowd here. And
and you know, I've never until really last year, I suppose, really gone out to deal with individuals. You know, I had a conversation about Corey with Bill Ryan in 2 separate interviews that we did a year ago. And I was very glad to do those. Bill is always great to talk to on these matters. And but basically, like, I've never been comfortable, and it's not that I don't want to have like a battle with someone else or I'm afraid to do it. It's irrelevant. It's just like, it feels like a waste of time usually when I've gone in that direction, and I could be more productive just working on the things that I want to work on. And B, like, there's a part of me that actually feels like, why have a battle with this other human being? But But again, as I was saying in that last segment, it's just like, it's enough.
Yeah.
It's enough. Just like no more.
Yeah.
Like, you got to stop.
It seems like, ufology is trying and trying and trying to get ahead, but then we have these big things that pull us off the track. These big dramas. If it's not this one, it's another one. And so it seems to me like it's probably a strategic move by somebody. I'm not saying like Corey Goode or anything like that. I'm just saying somebody else perhaps higher up who's got all the chess pieces, and they've got this community constantly going in circles. I mean, just for example, with you, like you want to get your books out. And
there's always another project.
There's always another project, and of course we have all these things to do, which is great. We enjoy doing this so much, but there are constantly these dramas like derailing everybody. I mean, look at everybody over here right now dealing with this. And before it was the whole Gaia thing with Patty and that whole gang,
the Luciferian.
It just pulls everybody off of the focus of their research.
Right. Well, it's like everything's churning all the time. And I remember back in the 90s, like a million years ago, when I first was exploring UFOs on the little message boards, and I discovered these things called flame wars. I hadn't seen those before. And it was like one guy yelling at another, "You suck. No, you suck. I hate you." And it would be back and forth. And I thought, what is this about this new medium that causes people to just escalate, And I made a decision back like in 94, I think it was, like I wasn't going to get into that because it's the most supreme waste of time. And I've always tried to stay out of these types of personality disputes. And I do believe, like your point, is it possible that there's an agency or group or someone that's stirring shit up to keep us on the back foot? Oh, let me get that laugh mic. We're sharing this mic. This is what Jimmy's talking to and what Tracy's talking to. There we go. Let's do this. Back you go.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Sorry about repeating that commercial break, but, things like that happen. It's live radio. Our guest tonight, Richard Bleepin Dolan. Very open and frank conversation about what's going on right now in our UFO community. And Richard, check this out. Speaking of New Age, I'm at a private party. A nice big home up in the hills, right? New Agey group there.
Right.
And I'm in the kitchen around the island, and I'm going to say there's 25 people packed into this kitchen. And somebody turns to me. I don't know anybody there, by the way. And somebody turns to me and says, "So what do you do?" I said, "I'm a radio host." "Oh, really? Where?" And I said, "Well, Fade to Black, and I also do the weekend stuff over at Coast to Coast AM." And I got this blank look. And what is Coast to Coast AM? And,
oh, wow.
And I exactly right. So I turned to everybody in the kitchen, Rita as my witness, and I just go, "So, who here listens to Coast? Nobody, right in the room." And now, in a weird way, it's very cool. I don't have to explain myself. I don't have to talk about Fade to Black. I don't have to talk about I don't have to take any questions, right? I don't have to field anything. But it was pretty surprising to me to have a room full of New Age, crystal-bearing, awakening, enlightened vegans. The real two. Nobody listened to Coast. Now, isn't that interesting? And I've gone to conferences where I've gone to, these New Age events where there isn't a UFO subject anywhere. And now it seems like it's trying to bleed into each other. And I find it a fascinating thing. Oh, by the way, Canada ran out of weed. I just wanted to let you know. I know you're close to the border and they just legalized, and I know you're a dual citizen. Yeah, they ran out of weed.
Poor Canadians.
My mom told me that.
That Canada
Tracy's mother, like the sweetest Canadian lady you'll ever meet, she was upset about it, apparently. How are we going to score?
She just knew.
Oh, she just knew. Okay, she's not a. No, I want to clear Tracy's mother's name. Her mother does not, to my knowledge, smoke weed.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. Not that there's anything wrong with it.
Right.
Yeah, it's one of the most liberating feelings in the world. Have you been to a pot store?
No,
it's not legal there, right?
No, not even medically.
Oh man, when you and Tracy, next time you're in California, I am going to take you to a pot store just because.
Seriously?
Right? Yeah, just because. It is the craziest feeling when you walk into a pot store here in California.
I'm going to live stream it when I go in, just for the
you can.
shock value.
You just look around and look at these hundreds of jars of weed and the smell and the edibles and the things and as they fill up your bag, right? And they go, "Would you like a couple free joints?" Sure, yeah, throw them in the bag.
I'm going to be Captain Bring Down here. You're just going to let me do it. So yes, of course, I've smoked pot in my life numbers of times, and I think fine, you want to smoke pot, do it. But I will say, and I think it's really important to say this, that when people really turn drugs into this wonderful thing, you're kind of doing the CIA's work for you. That's really the truth. So the CIA pioneered the use of hallucinogens. We all know about the CIA and LSD. And how this MK Ultra and the CIA's various mind control programs were deeply involved in the use of things like LSD and other types of drugs, not necessarily weed per se, but the idea. There's a very excellent book by a fellow named John Potash called "Drugs as Weapons Against Us," and I highly, highly recommend this book. And just like the late Dave McGowan talked about Laurel Canyon as a kind of operation to create the hippie movement of the 60s to derail the active peace movement, so too I think that there's a case to be made. And I think people really need to understand that the proliferation of recreational drugs is something that is used against us because, yeah, it's fun, it's nice. You can have, it's like, having a drink, or you want to get a little high, fine, but it takes you off your game. And the more people do it, the more off their game they are. And the next thing you know, your life has gone by. So I'm just going to say that. There you go. Done. Rant over.
I know, right? It reminds me of an episode. I think it was Saturday Night Live. I could be wrong. It might have been a movie. But it's just like, okay, go ahead, smoke the weed. Go ahead, get all complacent. The next thing you know, China's invading the United States. They're going to catch us off guard. Right.
I want to say one other thing, by the way. I over a decade ago, I was on the phone with Catherine Austin Fitz, and we were talking about finance and money, and she's taught me so much about that, and I still can't keep up with her. But I was on one of my bitch fests that I often will do, my rants, and we were talking about drugs, and I was just saying, damn it, they should just legalize all the drugs. I'm just sick of this criminalization of drugs. And she said, well, that's fine, Richard, but you realize that would cause a banking failure the next day. And I said, okay, stop right there. Let's talk about this. And her point was very logical. She said, well, let's just say you're a Mexican drug lord and you're trying to run $100 million through the Chase Bank of New York, which actually did happen back in, I think, 01, 02. It was Raul Salinas, the brother of the former president of Mexico, and it was Daniel Salinas. Anyway, his $114 million of his was stopped going from Mexico through the Chase Bank of New York. And Chase was obviously embarrassed, and they had their talking head out there saying, well, this is a highly irregular transfer. Fortunately, we have procedures in place to catch these things. Of course, I'm thinking Raul Salinas was not some idiot. Obviously, he had good reason to think his money would be able to go through and to be laundered properly. And this time he got caught. Probably someone ratted it out, and they're probably dead. But the point is, Catherine said, drugs are so unbelievably profitable. Everyone wants that money. Everyone wants drug money, from a street corner pusher to a cop on the take to a judge to entire agencies, to intelligence agencies like the CIA or the GRU or the Pakistanis or the Israelis or whatever. They all want it because it's too much. And if suddenly you legalized it, all of that money that washes through unofficially our global system, suddenly it just goes away. It becomes above board. And those people who've benefited from getting their 5%, wetting their beak on this transaction and so on, that all stops. And she argued that a great deal, I don't know how much, but a lot of the banking system relies necessarily on illegal drug transactions. So, you know, we want our drugs, people want our drugs, they want to be able to zone out. But all of this is interconnected with a very, very deeply criminal and awful enterprise that's making the world worse, not better.
I wanted to ask you, can you imagine, and we were just talking about the New Age stuff, if you went to a New Age conference, you and I, and we are walking through the crowd and not one person recognizes you?
That's happened many times. I'm quite used to that.
It's a pretty fascinating concept, because you would think that the two are completely familiar with each other, but you could probably walk through one of those conferences and nobody would know what Roswell was, right?
Well, I mean, to an extent, yeah. I mean, there's some overlap, obviously, but no, the New Age community is much, much larger, much more money than the UFO culture, I would say. There's a lot of money there, a lot of money. There's a lot of money in the Christian community, as I've learned. I've had some interactions with them, and they can put some money out there. And the New Age community, probably equally. Those are very lucrative markets. So it's not surprising that you find people work in those markets.
I wanted to ask you about Bob Lazar. And
sure. Why? I mean, happy to, but what brought this on?
Because just like Corey's got a new movie coming out. Okay, it's distributed by The Orchard, / Sony. Stephen Greer just had his movie out a couple of it was last year, Unacknowledged. Again, same distribution network. Jeremy Corbell just released Skinwalker, another mainstream film,
and I rather liked.
His next film, I haven't seen it yet, but I do intend to watch it.
Well, George Knapp really makes it. I mean, Jeremy's a fine filmmaker, and I like Jeremy. He is. But it's really George Knapp's material from the 90s that make that film just riveting. And Jeremy does good work in putting it all together. But
he's got a keen eye for cinematography, and
without a doubt,
he's very humble about it. But he's just got it's a real talent. It's a world-class talent. And so, but his next film is Lazar. And we have the same situation here where Bob has survived many waves of criticism over the years, and now this new film is coming out. Where do we stand on that when we talk about evidence and proof? And do you classify him as a whistleblower? Certainly Area 51 wouldn't be the household name.
Yes, so I do. I'm a supporter of Bob Lazar. And I'll just say I've caught a lot of hell for that over the years by a lot of people. I took a long, long time before I made some kind of provisional decision on what I thought about Bob Lazar, probably the whole first decade of the 20th century, to be honest with you. When I wrote my first book, came out in 2000, and second edition came out in 2002, I didn't really know what to think about Lazar's story. I hadn't dove into it sufficiently to know, and I was afraid. There's so many minefields in the UFO field, obviously, and the Lazar story was definitely one of the big ones. And but by the time I finally, I got to it, and I thought, well, I've got to really throw myself into this. And I read probably every statement Lazar made back in those days, 89, 90, 91. He was extremely consistent, actually. And then, getting into the claims of people like Stan Friedman that Lazar was a fraud and so forth, and that he didn't go to MIT and he didn't go to Caltech. And well, it turns out actually that Lazar, I think, I think what it was is he audited classes at MIT. He didn't go, and I don't think that he really claimed the things that he did. And if he did, I do know, George Knapp proved that he went to Los Alamos National Labs, where he worked there, and he did certainly meet with Edward Teller, who certainly provided the impetus for getting Lazar hired where he was. And then on top of that, I spoke to a number of people who are, oh golly, now I'm in a position that I can't mention someone's name or not. I want to be able to mention this person's name. He's pretty well known. But I guess I'll just say I had a number of people provide very strong confirmation that Lazar was where he said he was at the time that he was there. And I believe it. Now, that doesn't mean that every single thing Lazar said is true. I don't know if his information is accurate or not, but I do believe that he is truthful about what he said he did. And I was sitting right in the audience at the International UFO Congress in, was it 2015? Yeah, when he was there. In fact, I spoke on the same stage the same day. And I listened to Lazar with George Knapp up there, and I thought Bob Lazar gave a very excellent accounting for himself. So, no, I believe him. I think that he did what he said he did. And so, yeah, he's a whistleblower, in my view.
How has the UFO question changed? Because I think there's been a definite shift over the last 2 to 3 years because of some pretty big things happening. Certainly, there's TTSA. There is this very good side of things. There is the growth of Gaia TV, very big conferences across this country that are sold out, and then and television in general. There has been this elevation. I just named 4 major films, right, that have been released.
Yeah, well, what we're seeing, this is all the result of the web. Like, fundamentally, all of it. It's all the result of interconnectivity. Like, back in the 80s and prior, the genuine interest in UFOs could be muted by what I like to call our official culture, the official establishment, because they had such dominant power over the methods by which information would get out, whether through newspapers, which are all part of the Mockingbird system, or TV, which is even worse. And so it was only the development of this crazy new thing called the internet, where people were actually able, they didn't need a middleman. They didn't need a school marm nanny to say, no, you can't put this out. They just did it. And so what happened was this explosion of information and opinion and claims and everything else. And it just became like the Wild West almost overnight. And by the turn of the century, what had happened is that the interest in the UFO phenomenon, see, that's real, that's genuine, that's something that resonates with people. A lot of people don't realize that they are fascinated by this until they encounter it. And then they discover this hunger for truth and for knowledge. And so what's happened is that because of this development of this internet, people have been able to express this interest. UFOs have always been one of the most popular things to search on the web and on the internet since the beginning. And so what's happened is that the establishment media has had to adapt to that. And it's no longer just the establishment media anymore. Like, it's really easy for a lot of people now to break in and make their own movies, like Jeremy and like a lot of other folks. So you're seeing this explosion of creativity and of people making their own statements. I mean, on YouTube and everywhere else, there's all of these people that are just out there. So it's become this massive movement. And this is why, like, when I talk about disclosure as a paradox, it's impossible and it's inevitable. It is both of these things. Like, I've always felt disclosure about UFOs is impossible in the sense that there's really no motivation that I see among the powers that be, right, to give up this secret that is so revolutionary and damaging to the status quo. On the other hand, they're not the only people making the decisions, because we have a society in the process of revolutionary social, economic, and intellectual change, and infrastructure change. So the equation's constantly in flux. And this is why TTSA actually was able to do what they did. A lot of people have said TTSA is simply an intel op, and I'm not of this opinion. And I realize there are people who will criticize me for this, but I'm saying this at least partially on the basis of the fact that I've known Hal Puthoff for many, many years, and I've known him personally, and I respect him. And there's nothing that anyone's going to say to me to make me not respect that man. It doesn't mean that he doesn't have a motivation for doing what he does with TTSA, or that no one has their own personal motivations. I mean, everyone's got motivations that are private and personal, and everyone wants to make their money. But ultimately, what happened with TTSA is that you have this true believer, this guy, Tom DeLonge, who was clearly into the subject, you know, and you know, he probably, yes, he wanted to turn it into a venture. So you can say that's a bad thing, or you can say that you don't care, or whatever. It's just how it is. But this type of thing, as I see it, is kind of a historical inevitability. Like we're at the point where the capability to generate forward motion on this is too great. And so that the establishment has had to make, and is going to have to continue to make, concessions to this rising tide of people who want this disclosure. So, of course, the establishment's going to try to take as much control over the spin of that disclosure as possible. And you have to expect that. That doesn't make them evil either. Everyone's got their part to play here. So their job is to spin, and our job is to correct that spin. Our job is to tear away the veneers of spin and deception and half-truths and so forth. And it's, you know, that's where we're at right now. So I think we're seeing this. The dike is breaking. The dam is breaking. So,
yeah, the dam is definitely breaking. But let me ask you a very direct question. When you say that TTSA isn't an intel op, what makes you come to that conclusion when this community is staring down the eyeballs of members of the CIA and the defense intelligence community and counterintelligence, and the list is very long for those that have been creating counterintelligence against this community for years, and suddenly this is who is running this company. Where does that trust from you come from right now?
That's a fair question. So I would say this. First of all, anyone who's looked at the intelligence community knows it's not a single monolith. It's a labyrinth. And there have always been people in the intelligence community who do not believe in the UFO secrecy. And that's the fact. Now, I don't know every one of the people involved in TTSA, but I know Hal Puthoff. And as I say, I believe in his integrity. And I believe that he believes in the desirability of breaking this logjam that we're having in our society. I believe that about him. I can't speak personally about the other people involved here. And the thing is, yes, they're all out of intel. And so we need to recognize that. But does that mean that they're actually doing an op? Like, is this an op? Has anyone been able to prove that it's an op? Has anyone provided evidence that this is an op? If they have, I'm not aware of it, and maybe that's just my fault. But I don't know that it's been a provable op.
Yeah, the counter argument to that is an easy one. You can't prove that it is not.
No, right.
I mean,
so right. So we're kind of spinning in circles here. And
sure.
My attitude is this argument is almost part of the postmodernist infection of our intellect in today's world. By that I simply mean we've gone into the habit of looking behind arguments rather than at arguments. We've gone into the habit of looking at what we perceive as motivations of people for saying what they do rather than what they're actually saying and doing. So in the case of TTSA, what I've seen is over the last year, they've actually said a lot. Like Puthoff's speech at SSE earlier this year, Society of Scientific Exploration, was like an earthquake in its importance. I mean, here he is talking explicitly about an object that's of bismuth and magnesium of a certain type of structure that came to them. This is back in the Art Bell days when someone said this is part of a UFO crash retrieval. And Hal Puthoff's talking explicitly about how for years they tried understanding this thing and they couldn't make heads or tails out of it. And only recently have they been able, they couldn't figure out who made it, what it would be for. And only very recently, he said, have they been able to understand this as a very excellent, he calls, waveguide for electromagnetic frequencies in the terahertz range. And I'm looking that up and like, what is a waveguide and what is this? So a waveguide is like a canal is a waveguide for water. It guides things. So this very, very sophisticated piece of this artifact of whatever it is a highly sophisticated piece of technology. Now, Is there an ulterior motive that he has to say what he does? Well, I don't know what that is, but I know that he said what he did. And that's an important piece of factual information that we now can work with. They've released 3 videos and people have argued about those videos, but I'm at the point where I don't believe that those are fake. There is a big argument on Metabunk and I'm familiar with it all. And for a while, I thought maybe the gimbal video was indeed a hoax, but I don't believe it is. I think that what they've put out is legit. Now, if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, you know, and I'm allowed to be wrong, but this is what I believe at this point. So what they've done is they've done some very tangible things that we can work with. And the fact that they got an article out, because they were fundamentally behind what happened with the New York Times piece last December. And let me just say, I have zero regard for the New York Times. They do the work of the empire. They lied about Iraq. They were almost, you could say they were responsible in large part for the destruction of that entire nation based on lies. And we should never forgive them for that. And for so many other lies that the New York Times promulgates. And so and they've lied about UFOs since forever. So why should we, so what is the significance of this December 17th, 2017 article? Like
it's like a paradox.
It is, but my interpretation on this has been, and it remains so far, I think, that they did it to maintain as much spin and control over the story as possible. Because this was coming out, like, in other words, TTSA's forward motion was happening. Like, that was absolutely happening. And my opinion is that someone at the top of the New York Times structure said, all right, we'll do this because we will contain and control and will be the waveguide for this story. And in fact, we now know, I mean, they did a lot of deceptions and inaccuracies in their coverage. Like, we know that most of that $22 million that supposedly was with ATIP actually went to study the Skinwalker Ranch, and they didn't cover that. So there's a lot of other things, and they.
So what do we? So what do we do with this? You're saying that.
Well, what happens is that the New York Times, despite all of their lies and obfuscation and lack of credibility, they actually, despite themselves, because of the force of history, put out something on the UFO subject that actually gave it some credence. That in itself is an incredible moment in modern UFO history. And yes, the New York Times lies. Yes, the New York Times spins. But this much actually happened. And they did as much damage control over that story as possible, but still it came out. And that is because there is a force of history happening here. And in that sense, it's actually really exciting to see.
Let's take a break right here. It's very interesting, Richard, though, that you're saying the past is the past. This article is solid, so now we must trust.
We'll come back to that. It's not exactly what I said.
Exactly.
It's not quite what I said.
Exactly. That's why you're Richard Gleason Dolan. I'm just a dude on the microphone. And we'll pick up this conversation.
He's like, so what you're saying is... Oh, yeah, here we go. All right.
Oh my God, I'm going to speak for everybody right now.
Why?
Like, why is he just like, we're here to talk about the trademarking. Where did we go that whole last segment? What was going on?
All right, I guess he's done with it.
Bring it back.
Well, I mean, I don't know. I thought we kind of hit that pretty significantly. No, we talked like an hour about it. Was it an hour? What is it now? Midnight. When did we start? 90 minutes in. So we did.
This is what we're all here for, though,
Well, I mean, it's his show. I mean, I could say, hey,
it's true.
I'm not here to talk about Lazar. Let's go back to Corey Goode, you bastard. I'm not going to do that.
It's true.
Look, let's just roll with it. Let's just be happy. Can't we all just get along? I implore you.
Yes, but yeah, I mean, it's true. It's frustrating for everyone. We want to move it forward. It's hard to move this discussion forward.
Well, what's happening?
People don't understand Jimmy's motivation. Like, what is going? And people were wondering if he was bringing up all of the movies sort of as a way to sort of promote Corey's movie in sort of a sideways manner.
Yeah, maybe, probably. I don't know. So, look, they're friends. I think they're friends. I don't know how close they actually are, but he's more of a friend than I am to Corey Goode. And My God, the chat is just going.
I know, I can't read it. It's so fast. Oh my gosh.
That's fun. We'll review it later.
Yeah. But once again, we have such a fun gang here. You guys are amazing. Even though that went all crazy off, they're all like trademark.
I gotta say, this is off topic,
cool
but when we started, I had a cup of yerba mate. So like last week, I was talking about my kombucha, which I'm still totally digging in kombucha.
He tried this for the first time today.
But I tried yerba mate. First time I ever had this stuff. I'm like, where have you been all my life? I love this stuff. And we did it because we were going to try to get you off of your coffee.
Yeah.
To get you off some sugar. We're doing a little dietary thing here. Is that okay for me to say this?
Sure. We don't really need to talk about that.
But we don't need to. But anyway, so I'm trying to be supportive. We looked at the yerba mate and I'm like, this is the most delicious. This stuff is good. So I'm glad I had it before we went on.
I'm going to let you guys right now throw out any questions you want right now. I'm going to slow down the chat for this next part. Maybe we can like get Jimmy back on.
You want me to get a question in for Jimmy?
Well, yeah. Okay. So some people are asking like, about lie detector tests. When we were talking about whistleblowers,
right? And
what will it take to provide evidence, right?
Well, here's one thing I learned about the polygraph. This whole happened thing. This was with the whole Kavanaugh thing, and golly, I can't remember that woman's name now already, who accused him of the sexual encounter when they were teenagers. She took a poly, but what it turns out is they asked her exactly 2 questions. Like that was the entire sum total of the polygraph. It's like 2 questions. Yeah, that was it. And it really made me wonder, like, so how comprehensive are these polygraph tests actually? So when someone takes a poly, my inclination is to say, what is the exact nature of that polygraph? So what was Jason Rice's polygraph? I will say, all right, so I know that he took a polygraph. I don't know the specifics of it. I would be interested in the fact that he was willing to, and Corey Goode was not willing to take a polygraph, and it happened many times that he was asked and he declined it. So the fact that Jason Rice did is a potentially good thing in his favor. I'll certainly admit that. I have to say, look, I don't want to become overly jaded, but these secret space program whistleblowers, is that Jimmy? Is he coming back here? You gotta bring some game to this, or I think we're getting.
I just want to tell everyone, Joseph Farrell's in the house. Lots of people are in the house. Welcome to everyone. And Richard is interviewing Joseph Farrell tomorrow. So
well, we're gonna have a conversation.
Sometime,
not really
it's
even
a
an
conversation,
interview.
right? And it will be about this, and it's going to be in the afternoon sometime.
Joseph has a lot of relevant, on-point, insightful things to say about this.
Yes.
A lot.
Yes, he is still in here with us.
Okay, here we go.
Oh.
You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You can follow Richard at Rich Dolan. Don't do Richard. You got to do Rich on Twitter. It's right there at Rich Dolan. Richard, Rita just popped into the bunker here and said, are you going to open up the phones? You want to take some phone calls?
Yeah, of course. Sure. Why not?
Okay.
I have no opinion on this matter.
I have no opinion on this matter.
Phone calls is like, I mean, we've all gone down this dark road, Jimmy, with phone calls.
Yeah.
So how, let's see how that goes.
Yeah, I'll do the dance with you. Okay, 323-275-9695 or 818-921-6929. And I'll leave it there. I opened up those floodgates, Richard. Here we go. I'm going to put this one on hold, and there you go. Okay, so now I wanted to ask you this. We were talking about the New York Times before the break.
Oh, right.
But
you somewhat mischaracterized my position on the New York Times. I really need to say this.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you meant to. I'm going to give you that much, but I think you did. Inadvertently, let us say.
Sure.
Because I don't think, it's not that, like if I want to read, how did the Mets do last night? I'm sure the New York Times will tell me pretty accurately how they did. I mean, the New York Times will give news on certain things. Now, they will spin their news on other things that matter, and that includes UFOs. And as I just said before the break, like the New York Times spun the hell out of the ATIP story and out of the information that was basically pushed out there by TTSA. But it doesn't mean that everything that they put out there was therefore illegitimate. Like there were things that they put out that were and remain meaningful and fundamentally, Fravor's military encounter off the coast of California that he and 3 other pilots had encountering the Tic Tac UFO. That's important. And they didn't give by any means, a complete narrative of what happened there, but they gave enough that it broke through and got some attention. So there were important things there. And I feel they did it. It's like you have to give up some in order to maintain as much control as possible. And I think that's what they did.
Do you think that a year from now, do you think that TTSA has missed the boat? And like a year from now, that we are going to look back and go, wow, that TTSA effort was interesting last year. But
I don't know. I mean, they did so many awful missteps and horrible. I mean, my God, Tom DeLonge's interview on Joe Rogan. Oh, cringe fest. It was the worst, absolute worst. And then the whole Mylar balloon fiasco and all of this other stuff. I mean, just ridiculous. In fact, I did the show with you and Steve Merritt where we talked about that. Remember?
Right. Yeah, I do remember that.
So there were a lot of really unforgivable mistakes that they made, but I see them as mistakes. Bush League, for sure, but I don't see that as disinfo. I just see that as like total screw up. But the thing is, it's not all about Tom DeLonge, and I think what we're seeing is that Putoff and Semivan and Elizondo and these others, there's a real possibility that they're going to be putting more information out there. Look, I don't think that they're the saviors by any means, but I'm glad that they're out there. I mean, I'm interested in what more they may be able to provide in terms of information. Putoff's company is Earth Tech, and he's put out the word that he wants materials from alleged UFO crash retrievals. So, and he has said, now maybe he's being truthful, maybe not. He said that information that he gets and research he does will be made public. So that would be a good thing. So my attitude is let these people try to do their thing. If he has ulterior motives to make $1 trillion off the tech, well, fine. Let the man make his money. Like what we want is information and scientific data that we can work with to move this field forward. This is my attitude about it. Like, I mean, for people who are out there to get angry over the fact that anyone makes money at all in any field, it's like, what are you, Stalinist communism? Like, let's grow up and recognize that people have lives to live. And so Earth Tech, if he wants to make money off of technology that he can develop based on crash retrievals, fine, whatever. Like, who really cares enough to bitch about this? The fundamentals are that the information is getting out there. And this is where I'm at least philosophically with it. So I don't know if TTSA will fall flat. If it, people have talked about the $37 million that they called as a loss. And I just shrugged my shoulders at that. Like, Amazon lost money and has every single quarter for how many years? It didn't stop their valuations from going through the roof. Like, the fact that a corporation loses money is not necessarily a meaningful thing about their capabilities. And even the boilerplate message of, worried about or concerned about our ability to continue. I mean, whatever it was they said, that's just legalistic boilerplate. So what does it really mean? Well, I don't know, but I don't think the sky is falling. And I think people are really looking into TTSA as the most devious of operations. And it's not that there hasn't been a comical series of major gaffes and screw ups. There have been, but there has been another side to it as well. So I'm just willing to see how it all plays out.
All right, let's go to the phones. Area code 508. You're up on Faded Black. Say hi to Richard Dolan. Who's calling?
Chris.
Hey, Chris. What do you got for Richard?
Just would first like to say thank you, Richard, for everything that you do. I'm a big follower of you. I've been following you for a few years now. I live in central Massachusetts. and I happen to live in the founder of the American Red Cross's house, Clara Barton, which our town is well known for. And she walks around this house a little bit. She gives us, me and my wife, my 2 young children, some good messages every once in a while. And I just want to say, you know, you're doing a really good job, Richard. But like you said earlier, you know, with the whole Bob Lazar thing, it took you 10 years to get to where you are now. And perhaps maybe some of the ways that you feel about certain things, or certain people who are maybe coming forward and talking about the things that they are kind of going to become known fact in about another 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Thank you. No, I appreciate that, Chris. I honestly do. And one thing I like to try to do as much as possible is to take my time to make a decision. And look, I mean, I have a certain opinion. I assume you're referring to Corey Goode right now. And if something were to happen over the next few years where new evidence were to come forward to validate things that he says, I can say this very honestly, that I would change my public opinion about it. And I would support whatever I think is true about it. I mean, the thing about my attitude on this is I never ever want to get to a point where I feel ideologically committed to a particular answer. So if new information comes my way, then it's my job, honestly, to change my assessment of it. So I assume that's what you were kind of getting at.
But thank you for the phone call, Chris. Let's go to area code 602. You're up next on Fade to Black. Who's calling? Say hi to Richard.
This is Natasha Nix from Mysterious Forces Live. Hello.
Oh man, it's Natasha Nix.
Hey, I have to give a shout out to everybody in the chat room at Richard's YouTube channel. CW Chanter, the Dark Journalist, Joe from the Carolinas. Hello, everybody. Jimmy, I have to ask you a question, Jimmy.
Sure.
If you lived in an old West town about 150 years ago, and you were the doctor in the town, and your medicine was imperfect, and your knowledge was imperfect, but you did a pretty good job of treating the townspeople. And one day, a snake oil salesman rolls into town across the street, and he starts selling snake oil to your patients. Would you get upset? Would you think that somehow the whole practice of medicine had been sullied because the snake oil salesman rolled up across the street?
I'm trying to connect with what you're. I'm going to throw that to Richard. Do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, I think I get it, and I would say, yeah, I would probably have a problem with that if I'm a doctor, a legitimate doctor, doing my best to treat people, and I see a charlatan coming into town and providing fake cures, which I think is what Natasha's getting at. Then yeah, I mean, I would raise the alarm, and I would try to raise public awareness as much as possible and say, hey, look, my opinion is that this is not useful, this is not helpful. You're wasting your money, and you won't get better. So
there you go.
Which is what we're doing here.
Yeah, I got to agree with Richard on that one. So there you go.
I love you, Jimmy.
Right back at you, Natasha. Thank
you.
You're cutting out, actually. It's unfortunate.
It's okay.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Have a great night. That was a bad connection there. Let's go to, let's see. I'm going to go with, let's try a first-time caller. Let's go here. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Say hi to Richard Dolan.
Hey, Richard. How are you?
Hi.
Big fan.
Thank you.
Huge fan, actually.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. I left the chat earlier. I was at work hoping for a new Richard Dolan upload, and then I got a notification about the live stream, which I totally forgot was coming. I'm very excited about that. And I'm a first-time caller.
Yeah, there you go. What's your question for Richard?
So I'm curious as to what your opinion of the the other intelligence, as we might refer to it, being of an inner earth.
Okay.
Cut out. Okay.
Yeah, I think it cut out. What do you think about, Richard, the inner Earth possibilities of something living inside of this planet?
Well, I, as a publisher, a number of years ago, I published one of the books by Dr. Richard Sauter on underground bases and tunnel systems, clandestine underground facilities, which I will just say, ever since I really meticulously went through his work, I've had no problem and have no problem believing that there is very likely a substantial and deep underground infrastructure. Now, I mean, there's lots of variations on theories of inner Earth civilizations and so forth, and I don't really know how far back on this I go, but I do think that there's a current substantial underground infrastructure. A lot of it's from our own human civilization, in my judgment. But I would think, and I'm only just going on the basis of UFO cases that are coming to my mind that deal with underwater UFOs, that actually under the ocean floor and under deep underground would probably be good places for the presence of others to reside as well. I think it would actually make a lot of sense. But to me, it's a theory based on, it's a hypothesis that's supported by some evidence. How far back it goes, I have no idea.
Let's go to area code. Well, who is up next? 718. You're up next on Fade to Black. Say hi to Richard Dolan.
Hello, Mr. Dolan.
Hi. New York City, I'm guessing. 718?
Yes.
All
Thank you. Mr. Dolan, did you speak to a gentleman named Mr. Gibson in Nevada by any chance? During a seminar or something like that, he showed you a picture of like a UFO or something here in Queens, New York.
Golly, maybe, I don't know. I mean, that would be a hard thing for me to remember, to be perfectly honest with you.
Sure.
I'm not trying to dismiss it. I can't remember that. You have to understand, when I do events, I'm accosted and approached by many people.
With this, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. A close a friend of mine had like an encounter here in Queens, and this was like in her room, and they were like the beings were like 7 or 8 feet tall. They were extracting something from her stomach. I contacted MUFON about 3 years ago.
Okay.
When I contacted them, I didn't have any encounters or experiences at that time. Since then, I've had over 200 encounters myself. Some of these encounters I've documented. They're on the YouTube channel. You could see them for yourself. I have ongoing experiences, and frankly, I'm a little bit, it's been kind of hard on me dealing with it. But here I am trying to let people know the truth.
Okay. Well, thanks for calling. And I mean, is there anything else? I didn't mean to cut you off. Was there something else you wanted to say there?
I'm sorry. Just to see the video, it's on my YouTube channel, Mr. Catfish 2100. No spaces. The videos are there. The title is Triangular UFOs. As a matter of fact, let me just also say I was on Third Phase of the Moon. Their YouTube channel, they study these things as well. This UFO video that you're going to see is actually, this happened on top of a politician's office. His name is Mike Miller. He's with the 38th District Assembly of Queens, New York. And if you see the video, the UFOs are doing like geometric shapes and stuff. They actually come close and they're above his building and they're like in a triangular formation. So I just want to let you know, and thank you for your work. God bless you guys. Continue. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't really know how exactly to respond to everything there. I mean, you've clearly seem to have had experiences, and I guess the best thing to do to anyone who's had experiences like that, it's hard, right? So the best thing that I think we can do is we do our best to clearly explain what we think has happened, and we do our best in an imperfect world to provide that case before the rest of the world. And it seems like maybe you're trying to do that. So thanks for that.
I wanted to go back to a point that you had made earlier, and I know that you did. I didn't get a chance to see it, Richard, but I know that you did a live stream earlier this week about infiltration into the UFO community,
Yep.
and I'm sure that all of us are used to the concept, right? that this obviously goes on. But I want to give you the opportunity to explain that a little bit further into why would a three-letter agency be interested in the UFO community when they have been dismissing us for so long? What's the advantage of breaking into this community with disinformation? Where do they stand to gain?
Well, we'll go back to the Robertson panel, which would happen during the last weekend of Harry Truman's presidency. Early 1953, you have a CIA-convened scientific panel that really all that they did was a preordained meeting. They knew they were going to debunk all this UFO stuff that had been dominating American news for the previous year. And they came down with a recommendation that they were going to do a debunking campaign in the public, working with corporations, working with major celebrities. All of this was a no-brainer for them, and it was never even a question like, can we do this, by the way? So the ridicule factor was, there was a decision that was made that this is what they were going to do. At the same time, they also made the recommendation to infiltrate UFO organizations at that same panel. And in fact, they proceeded to do both of those things in the immediate aftermath. This is one reason I think the contactee case is a strong one, that it was some kind of disinformation, because all of those guys were right after the conclusion of the Robertson panel, 1953, 54, 55, and so on. Secondly, you have infiltration of UFO organizations, starting with the group APRO was infiltrated, as far as the Lorenzens who ran it could tell, by the late 1950s at the latest. NICAP infiltrated right from the beginning in 1956, 57. And so the point is, if you have a subject like UFOs that is as important as it is to national security and indeed to world hierarchical stability, the stability of the infrastructure of our world, then you've got to make damn sure that you maintain as much control over this as possible. In particular, if you've acquired UFO tech, if you've acquired non-human bodies. Like, this is the most incredibly revolutionary development one can possibly imagine. Of course, control over that would be non-negotiable. And so when you find these civilian groups that are nosing in on it, yeah, they may not seem like a threat initially, but you've got to, like a good chess player, if you can think 10 moves ahead, you make sure they never get to a point where they become a threat. The problem is that, from their point of view, is that our society has continued to evolve. We've become a bit more capable each generation in investigating this. That's the fact. Like, we're better at this now than we were 20 years ago. And they were better than people were 20 years before that. We are making progress. And so it's becoming more difficult for the other side to continue to contain us. So you got the ridicule and you've got the infiltration. They go hand in glove. And it's not just UFOs, by the way. So the reason that this is such a believable scenario, I mean, aside from the evidence, which is the dominant thing, but also the fact that this fits in with the wider pattern of U.S. intelligence community, COINTELPRO, and Mockingbird type operations, which have been going on throughout since World War II. Like, we know this has happened. This is how the United States national security apparatus operates. It's what they do. They infiltrate, they derail, they ridicule. They keep their opponents, or who they believe are opponents, off their game to the maximum extent possible. And you know what? They're really good at what they do. They're really good at what they do. So that is why, like, if we're going to get into this game and we're going to fight this battle, it is absolutely critical for us to be as clear-headed, as rational and non-emotional, and here I am saying and raising my voice, but non-emotional as we can be, so that we keep our heads, because this is, like, there's a lot going on around us here. And when, again, just to circle back to where we started here, to the claims of people like Corey Goode, the whole trademarking thing to me is almost like a sideshow. It's an embarrassment. It's sordid. And, it's too bad for him and everyone else involved that this comes out, because it doesn't make anyone look good. That's for sure. But the real important thing about this is that it's been a distraction, and it's been something that's made this community run around in circles in the most unproductive way. And it has been utterly divisive. It has not been good for unity, if that's what people care about. It's been a distraction. And I don't know that it's an op, but it sure looks like one. It feels like an op.
Yeah, feels op-ish.
Well, yes, it absolutely does. And not everyone look, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Like, I don't know that he knows he's in an op, but people are often useful for the intelligence community without even knowing. Like, there's always someone out there who's going to like make their name, want to be famous, want to do whatever. And by doing so, they play into the hands of those organizations that are looking to bring disrepute on a particular subject. So, it could be that. I'm not saying that he knowingly does these things. I don't know.
Ego sucks. We've all
got it. Everyone's got one. So
I know. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. At DEF CON, and if you've never been to a DEF CON, Richard, in Las Vegas, the Hackers Conference, you need to go.
Oh, no.
And Hackers on Planet Earth, right there in New York, you should go to that one at the Roosevelt. But that being said, they play a game there at DEF CON called Spot the Fed, right? And they play it, and the feds are all into it. You get a Spot the Fed T-shirt where they'll stop the conference. They'll 1,000 people in the audience. They'll stop and play Spot the Fed. Well, they'll bring up it. They'll literally will say, anybody here can point out a Fed. Somebody's going to raise their hand. They stand up. They point over. Right, that dude's a Fed. They'll make that guy stand up. They'll bring him up onto the stage, and they'll play 5 questions, right? And find out. Now the feds, they don't mind it. If you get busted and you are a Fed, you get a T-shirt. I was spotted at DEF CON.
All in good fun.
Right. We should do that. We should play Spot the Fed at Contact in the Desert.
Oh God. Well, right? I think people do it. People love to do it informally.
Man,
they do it all the time.
I'm thinking, I hope DEF CON doesn't have it trademarked.
The thing is, like, our field, I know we're running out of time. I know you got to wrap this up. UFO field has become a kind of a comical, egomaniacal, narcissistic, cultish sort of an embarrassment in so many ways. And I'm not going to get into other names. It's like, well, I don't want to have the wars. I'm not into it. But anyone who knows the field knows, like, they just know. And when you turn yourself into, the next latest greatest savior, then I think people need to be very, very suspicious of you. No one is the savior, and we are truly in this together. And unfortunately, though, there's this, I think maybe it's part of human nature. People want to find someone who's got all the answers. And that's too bad. That's too bad.
Yeah. Nobody does, Richard.
But there's always people willing to be that person. There's always people out there willing to be the person who pretends to have all the answers, and that's unfortunate.
Yeah, nobody knows. Nobody out of everybody, Richard, in our community. One of the craziest, best quotes I ever got on this show was from Giorgio Tsoukalos. And I quote him all the time. And this is what he said. I think it was last year, maybe it was 2 years ago. But he said on this program, he said, Jimmy, when ET lands and we start communicating and we're talking and we are able to get the answers that we seek, we will find out one thing, that we were all wrong. Right? It's just like, and you need to stop and just think about the significance of that statement. Right. And I think he's spot on the money. I think he is spot on.
I'm not so sure. We'll have to revisit that.
Yeah.
We'll have to revisit that.
I'm pretty confident in I think that's a pretty safe bet that we are
there's
all
certainly wrong. Yeah, there's certainly a lot that I don't know that no one knows. And yes, I will agree with that. But I do think that we are, in fact, making some strides in our understanding of what is going on, maybe slowly, maybe haltingly, but I do think we have the capability to pierce through this most amazing. It's the most amazing of mysteries, this UFO phenomenon. And even what we call UFOs, it's more than about unidentified flying objects. That's just like a little placeholder for this amazing thing that we find ourselves exploring. But I believe that we have the ability, if we trust our reason, if we trust our investigative capabilities, to continue to make genuine progress in it and to figure at least a few things out.
Well, I would have thought that we had disclosure in 2018. It didn't happen. We had a pretty good momentum there at the end of 2017, and it seemed like things were about to bust wide open. I still feel pretty confident that we're on the edge of something pretty big here exploding. What do you think? Disclosure?
Yeah, I go back and forth on it. I feel like there actually is, I sense, this is only my feeling, that there is a kind of speeding up a little bit. I do think so. I think there's this, it's a greater and greater amount of pressure that is coming from below, from us, that those people who have got this information, who've got the secret, increasingly are bit by bit are maybe grudgingly responding to. But I also think that there are secret keepers, and I would say they probably have a very good plan to hold on to this secret and control over it for as long as possible. Maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years. Like, as long as they can, they're going to do it, because it's in their interest to drag this out for them as long as possible, because the repercussions of a true disclosure, all right, and not even a complete disclosure, just a true one. Like if the president were to say, yes, there are aliens here, like that, if that were to happen, the repercussions would be profound and many and multifaceted, and would affect every aspect of our society. And so it's too unstable. Those people who are responsible, who think they're responsible, I think they could never give up the secret willingly. This is why I never believed ever that John Podesta or Hillary Clinton were ever going to be disclosure. Like if Hillary had become president, that she would be a disclosure president, as many people had said. I will never believe that. I don't think that was ever legit, because they may be criminals like all the politicians up there are, but they're not dumb. Like, they understand that this is a very, very volatile subject. And I firmly believe all they were doing was just recognizing by 2016 that there was a bit of a UFO vote. They were playing to the crowd. UFOs had become cool enough that you could talk about it on Jimmy Kimmel. And I think they just recognize that.
You're going to be, let's talk about a few things really quick before we say goodnight. What are you doing this weekend? Are you going to go hang out with some folks?
Tracy's sitting right here, and she runs my schedule. So I think we're going to be here. This is my day every day. We wake up, we go to our website. I have a website, Richard Dolan Members, and I'm just going to say it. It's a great place to go. We work it every single day. It never stops.
I thought Alien Con was this weekend in Baltimore.
Oh, not this weekend, but it is coming up.
Oh,
November 9th and 10th. Yeah, this is like my first Alien Con, so this will be fun.
Yeah. Okay, so that's that. And then I thought it was this weekend. It goes to show you what I know.
I think I'm going to do yard work, probably.
You're going to do yard. That's what I did this weekend. Yeah. And then let's see. What are you doing in 2019? Conscious Life Expo? Are you coming out for that?
No, I've not been invited for that. That's fine. I will be doing Contact in the Desert. I've got to finish up my little application for that, but they want me out there for that. And Tracy and I are doing an event in Manchester, UK in July.
Oh man,
that's out there. And I think we're doing a couple of other things. I honestly, here's my thing. Like I'm trying. I want to travel a little less than I have in the past. There's writing, there's work I got to do. And the thing is, like, when you travel, I don't know about other people. Like, when I travel, I just can't write. I can't get anything done. It's very, very tough. And I learn from the travels. I gain knowledge from other people when I travel. People who attend these conferences, the attendees are the real education, and they always have been for me. So I gain from that, but it's hard for me to get a lot of fresh work done. So I'm trying to hunker down and get some projects done. It's very important for me personally.
Well, thank you so much. And Alien Con is coming up in November, and I was kind of joking about that. But the thing is, Richard, and I totally agree with you. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Rita and I were doing 12, 14 events a year. And it just got to be too much. There was everything else that we wanted to accomplish for an entire year didn't get done. And we had to back up. So you should do the same thing. Just slow it down a little bit, and so you can finish False Flag, and I don't have to bother you about it.
No, it's true. I want that, and I've got other book projects that are calling me. The conferences, they're seductive. The good ones are very, very nice to go to. They're fun, and I'm not going to deny it. And
No doubt.
There's folks out there who really like to bitch about the conferences, and but the fact is, like, they would want to go because they're enjoyable. You get to meet a lot of really great people, and it's definitely fun. But the thing is, and they're also good in that they force me to develop fresh ideas. Like if I'm asked to give a presentation, like I've got to really think things through, and I don't like giving the same presentations. So it forces me into fresh thinking, which is good for me. So it's not like nothing gets done. A lot gets done, but writing on projects that I've been working on, like a conference will take a good week out of my life, like, to prep for it, getting things ready for that, coming back, jet lag, whatever. So it takes a little bit out, and I'm not trying to get sympathy, but it's just one of those things, and it's just part of the game. But I'm trying to step back just a little bit to get a little bit more work done.
Thank you so much, Richard, and give my best to Tracy. Be safe and be well.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Richard Bleepin Dolan. Go trademark it. I'll talk to you, Richard. Great night.
All right.
Fade to Black. I'm Harold City Church.
All righty. We're going to do a breakdown here.
You guys have been so patient and so amazing. Oh my God.
So look, we did bring it back a little bit. I tried to tie it back.
Yeah,
and,
you brought it back. Thank you.
And to do that, which I thought was appropriate to kind of give a unity to the whole conversation.
Yeah.
So that was lots of fun. I think let me hang up on Skype here.
Okay.
Otherwise, Jimmy's gonna.
Yeah, someone said, and I agreed, if we were going to go in this direction, it would have been nice to give a chat about the real whistleblowers like Bob Dean and Carl Wolf,
Oh,
that would have been really nice too.
Carl Wolf was a genuine whistleblower, and Bob Dean was someone who I just loved the man. I really loved Bob Dean, and I don't mind saying it at all. Bob, to me, had one critically important story, and it's the only story that I ever cared about that he said, that he talked about, which is his time at SHAFE in the 1960s, where he talked about being exposed to a document that was called Cosmic Top Secret. Everything else Bob said was fun, but none of the other stuff was really resonant with me. I didn't really care, but I cared about that one story.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about Bob is I just loved the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And
sounds like a lot of people.
He was an absolute. He was a beautiful human being, and I'll always miss him. And I was sad that his health really declined in his last few years. But he was, to anyone who knew him, he was. What am I talking into this for? This is like not. I'm talking into this microphone.
Talk to your peeps.
Yeah, hey
they've
there.
been so great in hanging out during all this and all this sidetracking.
I never knew Carl Wolf, but I've listened to him. He's lots of videos of him out there. And I've read his testimony in Stephen Greer's book Disclosure, which is actually a really fine book. People may say what they want about Greer, but that book, Disclosure, is actually a really excellent book, and I'll always recommend it. It's got a lot of good testimony in there.
People think Bob Dean had scary truths.
Yeah, he was a great man. So what else? How else are we doing here? What were your thoughts about listening to this whole thing and your experience of watching everyone in chat, listening to Jimmy, listening to me? Did you have any reactions to this?
Honestly, my attention was back and forth because you guys see the chat was going so crazy. so fast. Everybody wanting, it's like trademark.
I feel like we discussed it very thoroughly. I mean, I feel like tonight I said everything that I wanted to say.
I think.
What more am I going to say here?
Probably that was as far as it could go with Jimmy. I think a lot of our people wanted to know, why Jimmy chooses to support them. They were kind of wishing that we could address that, but I mean, I guess the real truth about addressing that, we'd have to bring Jimmy onto our show.
I can look. I mean, right. I can say a few things without doing disrespect to Jimmy. I mean, look, I like Jimmy. I mean, I've known him for years. Mm-hmm. We've had people need to understand, like, he's got my phone number and he'll text me anytime, say, call me, and he wants to talk about different things, and I talk with him, you know, and I feel like he's a decent, a genuine guy, and he knows a lot about this field. He's got a lot of knowledge, and I think.
Do you think he's just trying to stay neutral, or do you think?
My personal opinion is he's genuinely into the subject, but he's also genuinely a radio guy, and he's genuine, like he's looking to see like what works for him. Corey Goode and David Wilcock work for him, like that's good for his ratings as far as he looks at it, and I think that's a big part of it, and that's a business decision that he's probably made, and but the thing is, like, I don't really know what goes through his mind. I can't speak for that, but it wouldn't surprise me if he will convince himself, like a lot of people do, that maybe there's something to these stories. Maybe we benefit in talking it out and having these conversations. And I think there's a lot of people, right, who feel that way. And there's a truth to it. Like, there is a truth to, like, getting the stories out there. But the problem that a lot of people have is when a story comes that is so difficult, it's so outrageous, that we just, like, it fails the smell test. And, you know, so he's a little bit behind the curve on that one. I think a lot of people have really kind of caught on to that. He's got to back away here. I sense that he's actually doing that. I think that he's kind of getting the memo that this whole debacle with Corey Goode, this latest trademark fiasco, has really, really backfired, really seriously backfired on him, which, like, anyone could see that was going to backfire. And I think Jimmy's now seeing it, and he's like, okay.
Well, isn't this kind of, I mean, the first time that Jimmy has really wanted to talk about this? Because usually...
Well, I've talked with him about it on his show in the past, and he's always known like my opinion.
He's gone. He was willing to go a lot deeper. So I know a lot of people were giving him a hard time, but I think that he did go a lot farther than before.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did, and I'm glad that he did.
And you know, we can be the ones to take it farther. You know.
I'm friends with Jimmy, and people want to criticize me for that. Fine, I don't really care. I mean, I like him. And I respect many things that he does in this field. And if I disagree with him about certain things, which I do and have, and I've told him, and I've told other people, then fine, I'll disagree with him. Again, I feel like it's important for me personally, like if I disagree with someone, not to throw the whole thing out.
Right.
Like you just can't do that.
Right.
We all have relatives. And sometimes you have a relative or a friend that has one opinion that you're like, how can you be so stupid and believe this? And so do you therefore like stop being their friend? Well, in our society, people have done that. Like in fact, couples have gotten divorced over Trump in the last few years. Like, how screwed up. Well, maybe they weren't really a good couple to begin with if that happened. But like don't break up with your friends over one disagreement. If there's a problem in deep fundamental values rather than a difference of perspective, then okay. If someone's actually a bad person, fine. But if they have a difference of perspective and they see the world a little differently than you, it doesn't make them bad. And in the case of Jimmy, yes, I consider his attitude toward Corey and David to be a weakness. But look, you know.
Well, people are often, I don't say this as a criticism, biased by their friends. You know, if they have deep relationships with certain people, you know, obviously it creates a bias, and that's a natural thing.
They're all out in LA. They all talk to each other. They all hang out. I mean, Shelley writes, hard to move ufology forward when sources don't agree. R.E. Corey Goode, how can we know real sources from potential misinfo played by unseen power holders? Working with politician Stephen Greer. And thank you, by the way, for your support, Shelley. And how do we know real sources? You know, in philosophy, they call it epistemology. What's your theory of knowledge? How do you know what is true? What are your sources? In history, it's the same problem. Like, how do you judge the validity of a source? And again, like I was saying earlier, it's not like a math equation, like you just absolutely know. We have to use judgment. So in the field of history, which is the field that I guess I know best, we have to go by corroboration. We have to go by our estimation of the reliability of the source, and we do our best. Mm-hmm. I don't know. We just do our best. It's getting a little late here, and I think my yerba mate, is that what this is?
Yerba mate, yeah.
Is wearing off.
You're getting tired?
I am. It's almost 1. I think I'm going to vote for winding it down soon. What do you think?
Yes. I really want to thank everyone. I mean, it was kind of a cool thing we did tonight. It was kind of weird. I know it went off track and stuff, but other than that, it was really kind of a cool thing. It was
fun, right?
Yeah, doing the show. We're all in here together. We sort of got this different angle watching you do the interview that we've never had before.
Right. And I've done interviews with you in the room, but like you're sitting right there.
Yeah, I know.
Kind of really super.
Yeah.
Which was different.
I was trying to like poke him when we were sort of going off track. I thought you can bring it back, but I know you were trying to be respectful to Jimmy too. So.
Someone says I'm too nice. I'm actually not too nice. You've got to hear me when the camera's off. I'm not really always too nice.
He's the New Yorker, but he's very, very nice. He is indeed. But
I'm New York. This is Canada, and we have a little cultural thing going on here sometimes. Yeah. Like occasionally, like ultra polite, considerate, respectful. Here, publicly, yes. Privately, not always so much.
He's just extremely direct, which is something I appreciate. I do. Yeah. Okay, so you guys, I know I already said this, but
someone said I want to see the RD eye roll.
Yeah, that's one of our members.
Yeah, that happens.
That's Kirsten. Yeah.
You look for it on a UFO panel at a conference. That's where the eye roll becomes. I can't even help it. I do panels all the time, and sometimes I really get into it.
Oh my gosh! If you guys are ever there, you can just count the eye rolls. I
don't mean to. I don't mean to.
Oh my God, it's terrible.
Well, it's part of the culture. Like the UFO subject brings in my opinion, like it's brought in some of the most brilliant people I could ever imagine, like Joseph. And I have mad respect for dark journalists out there. And a lot of the other people out there who've done really good work. Brilliant people who are fearless. But it's also brought in people who are, and I say this, I genuinely say this with sympathy, but who have damage, psychological damage at times. And then it brings in also the charlatans who feed on that. They prey on it. And sometimes they're on a stage with me at a panel. And when I'm listening to that, yes, when I have to listen to someone who talks about how he knows the Arcturians are really happy with us because they just told him earlier, yeah, the eye roll happens. It's like, just stop talking and go sit over there and farther go over there and don't come back. Like, that's my attitude. And
he wears how he's really feeling.
I'm getting to a point where I'm 56. Like, I didn't think I'd ever make it this long. And the clock is always ticking. Like, honestly, you get to a certain point in life and all you see is like time is the most precious commodity that you have. And one thing that I've realized is like, I don't have time for bullshit anymore. Like, and I'm not going to waste my time on it. It doesn't mean that I want to become intolerant and I want to become rude and I want to become like totalitarian, judgmental over other people. But I'm also not going to waste my time on things that I know are nonsense, and no one's going to make me waste my time on it either. So, but if I have to sit on a panel, then I am being forced to waste my time, and I will roll my eyes. That's my silent protest.
Natasha, you don't have to do that. You thank you to everyone for the super chats. Honestly, we were not doing that for this tonight. But I just want to make sure we thank you all for being so generous. Okay, so Joseph Farrell and Richard are going to talk tomorrow. I know I keep saying it, but it will.
Did we have a time? Yeah, 4 Eastern.
Because it's not a formal interview. It's just going to be a discussion. So it will be, we can really move with that.
If I can live stream it with Joseph, we'll do that. Otherwise, we're going to record it, and we'll put it right out immediately after. So it'll be one or the other. So we'll get it right out.
And then we have our live show also.
Oh, tomorrow night. Yeah.
At 8:00.
Yeah. I've got to think about that. I don't want to do this subject for that. We'll talk about something else. We'll hopefully figure something else.
Okay, sounds good. And we just put out a newsletter. If anybody wants to be on the newsletter, you can subscribe to that. It's on richarddolanmembers.com on the front page, or Facebook, Richard Dolan Intelligent Disclosure. But really, we just hope you guys have a great night. And
one more thing. Behind us is a map on the wall. It's an artistic rendering of the Earth. It is not, repeat, not a depiction of the flat Earth. Not flat Earth. It is an artistic rendering that we saw and thought, oh, wow, doesn't that look cool? Let's put that on the wall. And you may notice in the back corner is a spherical representation of the world as well. So it's all here. That's on the wall because we just thought it looked cool, which it does. It's like they call it a Mercator projection. If you went to school, you will learn that. It doesn't mean, as some people actually have wondered, are we flat earthers? Like, come on, let's like put that to bed. So no, not a flat earther.
That was coming up in chat a lot. I'm like, we have a globe too. We have a globe back there.
All right.
Anything else we want to tell them?
I don't know. Probably. Who knows?
We're doing a lot of videos and stuff coming
idea.
up. So, but you guys were amazing, and
lots of fun. I enjoyed this as well.
It was a great night. Thank you to Pursuing X. Thank you to Lori and Michael as always.
Yeah,
for moderating the chat and being there with us and helping us with everything. We couldn't do all of this without them.
All right. It is time. It is time.
Everybody have a great night.
Thanks so very much. It was a pleasure, and I hope this was enjoyable for you. It certainly was, I think, a very positive experience. And the main thing is that, positive things come out of this, which I feel that they will.
And we're all here together.
So on that note, okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Here we go.